trying to find out who really my other half is or who really I am in here. And what is it making me?
We still have access to living resources. Some of our elders still can tell us about the first time that they saw a kabluna or a white man. What other people and cultures have that?
It's amazing. I hope that we'll understand. I hope that us young people will want to know more about the claims, about our history.
It looks to be one of another good episode of my life. This is what I want to share with people.
Nga sa Kia.
Kinaunong, ma'am.
Ang nagtasa ko.
Ang naktasa ako?
Ang nagtasa.
Bila jonik ka akong nakpe. Kano, inusimin si kanuin ng makya.
Tayo mano kakalo nga ako pilat yung ma'am. Tayo magbiridyo amigo inunik ko ka Julay me. Julay mo lakilokit to kakalo lakilok. Tayo inu ka masuka makaway mangitung. Kingon niya ko kaway balila ka maino inalakitot. Piliritil ang ayok kakakaway balila ako. Nga ino piyo silatang atok tilo. Kadluna na yung itong. Kaway lila po nga. Tayo maukiw kakapsiyo pagkaya 1923 inulak to binyo ka matitirak si mayo maliksyo tayo man nauma.
1923?
Suliman inukulog po nga.
Kano, sang yung minyalo ningi?
Sang yung minyalo ningi, udyang nalakto atong nilaksukin. Kahit man ato katiw sang ining udyang nalawang ito galin. Udyang naktoya lawang ito. Kisa ni man sang minyalong itay ko atong nilakalaksi udyang naktuwin ni.
We were the first peoples of this country. We had our own laws, our own distinct livelihoods, our way of life, and we were very much a self-contained people that really didn't need a lot of outside resources or help.
Huh? PJ.
Yeah.
Our parents were teachers and everything, doctors and teachers, and I think they were even our prime ministers. A lot of people say we are not educated because they didn't go to school. They think they are not educated, but they were educated.
I bet if Inuit in a different way had a way of saying you have a degree or whatever, your whole wow would be full from your experiences. It'd be too full. No,
I'm still learning today. I'm going to learn all my life, I know it.
Sibuni viningi teissumatoqa. La teissumatoqang marattu apersorsugue ungasittualo qujiso. Autlaqsimaqattarsute imaaliuqattartumani inuusingi qallunaataqalorn nanisulle ilanginne takultialorsuman ate assualu ungaseqquusikijaqat isumagittiaqornangimmaqattaqasulle qannu teissumani ullumimu tautunguaqa tappattiakulut galuarsu.
We know that the earliest traders who came, they were aware that the indigenous people they encountered were in control of the territory, and as newcomers, the newcomers were not. So there would have been that sort of mixture of fear and respect. They were always in the position that the indigenous people could kill them. You know, they could eliminate them if they wanted to. How baffling would it have been, mutually baffling, for Inuit to meet those early men who came?
Piyakya to hatalaw to. Ukhasak takalaw ng gabo makul Inuit gabo malagayiw law ng matalita. Tayo sumanisibo niyan eh.
Europeans who came, they were almost all men who came from extremely hierarchical situations. If you worked for the Hudson Bay Company, you were almost in a feudal relation. If you had lots of local control because you were alone, but in the hierarchy you had very little authority, almost none. If you were a missionary, well, there was God, and then there was the Catholic Church or the Anglican Church. There was an enormous hierarchy that bore down on those individuals and told them how to behave. If you were a federal public servant, you had the enormous apparatus of the modern state behind you and all of its resources, but also all of its rules. I think when they encountered Inuit society would have thought they'd found natural socialism, because the principle in communism, from each according to his abilities, to each according to his needs, prevailed.
How tuki sinasalaw tugod kanata gabo makakaya nga kanata ang iyok kakakaya nga amma kisiyan how malaw tugod queen kanata amalo queen nuna hotigi ma queen pehotigi law tanga tan kanata taman na tay ma ako niya tuki siga wala tamo.
Did you understand that it was maybe threatening your language and culture?
We started to get into a situation where there was a lot of contact with outside people, and different cultures and different languages started to encroach on our own way of life, and it started to change who we were, like in terms of, you know, how we perceived ourselves. Even though we were still indigenous with our own language and culture, we started to change.
By the early 20th century, there's a widely held view that the indigenous people are inferior as people who weren't capable of surviving in the modern world. On the Dominion government side, Inuit were a side issue. The Dominion government didn't want to take the land right then. They just wanted to be able to do it eventually. That changed with the Second World War. Everything changed with the Second World War.
World news today. American bombers based in the Mediterranean area have made their fourth attack on German industries in Steyr in Austria.
Germany has been finally overcome. God save the King.
This is how I felt. Now I'm knelt down, trying not to sob at what's left. Still so beautiful. Miles and miles of darkness, admiration of dancing lights.
How great a threat do we face now and for the future from the striking power of the Soviet war machine? Where can Canada make her most effective contribution? If the decision ever comes to hurl the world into its greatest war, that decision will be made in the USSR and in the United States. And between the two, the shortest distance is over Canada.
As a first step in that joint enterprise, a triple chain of radar posts was thrown across the continent. The Pine Tree Chain, the Mid-Canada Line, the Distant Early Warning Line. And to complete the system, two arms extended seaward by picket ships and a mobile line of radar planes. This is the shape of any total war the future thrusts upon us. The missile, the forbidding symbol of tomorrow's terror.
This is all happening in the late 40s and early 1950s. And so from the perspective of Inuit, I'm sure it felt like an invasion, because far more imported material came with the military than had ever come with the fur traders and with the missionaries. That made the North more visible to the Dominion government, and it also awakened again the fear of U.S. domination of Canadian sovereign lands. All of this increased the interest of the federal government in effectively occupying Inuit territories.
What is it worth? Is heaven or hell on earth? Can you find who you are? Navigational stars and sunshine, let you know where you are, never fall. What is it worth? Is heaven or hell on earth? Can you find who you are? Navigational stars and sunshine, let you know where you are, never fall.
There were a lot of changes that took place during the Dew Line, where people went to the Dew Line, and then the settlements were created. Over a very short period of time, people were compelled to move into communities, and a lot of people didn't know how to live in communities. Government moved in very quickly and really took over the role of men.
Could you tell us about how you felt during those years of change and how you reacted?
I felt sad, because one of the things that's so important is to have pride, dignity, and a sense of worth. And I found that all of a sudden, so many people didn't have all that, especially when you've had it. We were poor, but everything we did was what we did. And so to have to begin depending or encouraged to depend totally on government, I think that takes a lot away from people.
We were wards of the government. It's a term that was used to describe our situation.
Do you remember what kinds of things your parents might have been saying or feeling when they moved into communities?
Kind of hard to say. The real reason they moved was the government came in when the school was built. It was the government that imposed more of a, I think, breakdown with social relationship with people.
What experience do you have for you to feel that way? Like, there's probably something you really looked at.
For example, when we were kids, our parents didn't have any control whatsoever. The priest or the government official at that day used to tell our parents, look, you have no choice but to get your child to school, otherwise they won't get child allowance. And that was the only source of income at that time, I guess, for our parents.
There was a certain amount of fear of people when they moved.
How did you feel?
I was just curious as a little boy, and when we started going to school, when we were put into school without ability to speak, it was frightening. It was frightening.
Foreign language?
Yeah, foreign language. Even though you couldn't speak in English, you weren't supposed to speak your language, yeah?
So what did you do then?
So you just remained silent. And remain silent, not say a word.
Naturally and culturally, Inuit, they don't like to go against the grain. It's very much you respect who you're supposed to respect, and that's how you live your life. You're giving that respect to people who know more. Those were the elders. And then when white people come up here and, they have these high-powered rifles and, it's so much easier than throwing a harpoon. It's hard not to feel like that, like they know best, they know better. And there was lots of help on both sides. Like, the Inuit had to sew their clothes for the white men. I'm not really sure why they felt that it was insignificant to the things that white people were giving them, but they did.
Who was making a struggle? Why isn't it the other way around? Where we're letting other people.
I always ask that question too. Why are we as original inhabitants making outsiders do that to us? Why are we making them come up here and set up their government and think their way of life is more superior to ours. It makes me wonder why do we, I think we as Inuit, even young people, always have to ask that question, why are we under a government that we never formed? Why don't we have something of our own?
Taxi kano asid tutuak sa maninga unikakon na kayo.
Ayong nagalalaw to taman na ino sa kilaw to but kanim magtualaw sa mga matanuwang bawal kalawak sa lugo agas mitamaw ng aksuta kanim mang mata taat sumala tatanga tukublo ni amma sa kikilaw taka tukublo ni amma tayo na uwigi niyang angayo at anuli ang tukublo ni kila may mga tako toko kang mata ayong nakutawlo kanila to nanila kalo ang mga pinusiptin nalo nalaw pilalaw to matagwaning isuta tawan no nalialang ulaw sa mga ta.
What was it like on the CD? How?
It was scary at the time because I was 11 and we heard of anybody who went to the hospital really. And then hospital to me in Inuktitut Annevik.
Yeah.
It just sounds like it's a place to go and die.
Yeah.
And to be sick. Yeah. And I didn't feel sick.
And in the sanatorium, you were away from home, and the nurses pretty well treated you the way they want to. We were in a big long building, just full of beds. I'd say between 30 and more of all sick Native kids. From Inuit to, there were some Indians in there. As a 6-year-old, I used to pee in bed, and the way they dealt with that is they'd beat you up with badminton bats in the morning. We thought it was normal, funny thing, to be treated that way because we're Inuit. We had a low esteem about ourselves. I guess it's a trade-off. If we weren't sent off to sanitariums in those days, we'd be dead now. We wouldn't be alive.
From probably the early 40s to the late 60s, when Inuit were the least, they had least control over their lives, and there was a lot of feeling from Inuit that we were under the control of Hallunaat.
Now in Ottawa for their 12th session, members of the Northwest Territories Council. Main topics are the welfare and education of the 13,000 Eskimos and Indians who inhabit Canada's 1,300,000 square miles of strategic Northland. Gordon Robertson, Commissioner for the Northwest Territories, presides over the meeting.
Large amounts of money are being spent in the North, with much of it going to Eskimo labor. What effect is this having on Eskimo life and custom?
The most noticeable thing, of course, is that Eskimos now are living in one place, they're working at one job, and they have to live a completely new way of life. They used to hunt for seal and walrus. They used to follow a trap line. They had a nomadic way of life. Now they have to settle down at one job, work regular hours, live in one place, get used to the kind of house we have, the kind of food we have, and all that sort of thing. It's having a very profound effect.
There's a word in our language, as you probably know, ilganaktok. Yeah, we used to use that word a lot. And in fact, when we were kids, you know, if the elders wanted us to listen, they would say, you know, like the big white man or whoever is going to come and get you, you know.
Our human rights were trampled in that. We didn't even understand the term human rights then. And of course, it was no concern of the federal government then. And they had this policy of assimilation. We were told that our language and culture were going to die, and that we had to learn a new language, learn a trade, and forget about our traditional way of life.
At first glance, it looks like an ordinary road construction camp. Actually, it's a school. It's a unique pilot project being carried out by the federal and territorial governments to train Eskimo and Indian youths in heavy-duty equipment operating. Discipline is strict. 10 students that started the course have dropped out. A few for liquor offenses, others, like the Eskimo boys, who are very close to their families, left because of homesickness. The top students in this class will get jobs at Coppermine when they graduate, where a large airstrip is being built. Others hope to work at the open-pit mines at Pine Point.
It seems like your culture was at a threat, and could you give us your thoughts on that?
In Labrador, we often hear stories of why the language in a certain family ended at this particular generation, because they were told by government officials and even by missionaries that eventually this language would no longer be of no value, and it would not help your children get good jobs or anything of that nature. You know?
A lot of Inuit my age lost the language, and that's really sad. When you grow up in a situation where it's a shame to speak your own language, it's very difficult to get out of that mode and be proud of who and what you are.
I've been feeling pretty concerned about how the conversations that we've been having with all of the people that we've interviewed have been in English, and the reason that they've been in English is because I'm the one interviewing, right? And even though I'm the minority in the group, there's me, then there's PJ, who's an Inuktitut speaker, and then there's the person that we are interviewing, who is also an Inuktitut speaker. So I'm the one who doesn't speak Inuktitut, and I feel pretty bad that I just feel bad that the conversations are being held in English. And I've been feeling like maybe David or Tommy should have been on this particular shoot, because this region that we're in right now, this shoot is very strong in Inuktitut, very strong in language, and you're not going to see that same strength in the Western Arctic, in Western Nunavut, such as Qugluqtuq and Cambridge Bay. You're not going to see that same strength in the Inuvialuit region, and from what I've heard, the Labrador region. So this is a really important shoot for language, I guess, to capture Inuktitut, and I feel bad that we're missing out on that, because I'm on the shoot and I don't speak Inuktitut.
Anang nalangulaw pilalaw sa mayo taman tuki sila sugo.
The older leaders, they saw immediately that if things continue the way that they are, without us having some say in how things are governed, that eventually the Inuit culture would be completely gone.
Kuni nga, uhak daw si mangito kalani pinya kasulok si mabagot. Nalo na kon na iman ino sibot tikita wallia tuina langa loktok dai manga hallita wallia tuina ni inusit sajarin tatina. So we have to get ready to face the challenge. And iminiglo lak singa nisa umallota.
Late 60s, 70s, evolution was too slow. We're gonna die in captivity. Evolution was too slow, revolution too fast. Something in between had to happen.